Friends, imagine this. What would happen if you were out at sea in your boat and suddenly all the water disappeared? Later, you see the ocean bed completely empty and desolate. How terrifying would that be? And where did all the water go? Will it ever return to the sea? Let's find the answers to all these questions through this story. You're going to love this movie, which is a sci-fi adventure that came out this year called Survive. So, let's dive into today's story. It begins by introducing a family who comes to the middle of the ocean to celebrate their son Ben's birthday. This was the Caribbean Sea. Everything seemed completely normal. Ben's mom jumps into the water to go swimming while Ben and his father are busy fishing. But suddenly, Ben's mom, Julian, feels as if a massive presence is swirling around her underwater. When she looks around, everything appears normal. Then, out of nowhere, something pulls her under the water. At the same time, the instruments on their boat start behaving unusually. Ben and Tom don't notice any of this because they are focused on fishing. Meanwhile, as Julian struggles to save herself, she shouts to Tom, trying to get his attention, but no one notices her at first. That's when Julian feels the ocean water moving backward, and now Tom notices it too. Seeing Julian in danger, Tom jumps into the water to save her while Ben starts the engine to bring them closer. Tom successfully rescues Julian from drowning, and then Ben and Casey help pull both of them back onto the boat. That's how Julian's life is saved. Back on the boat, Tom gets angry at his daughter Casey. He says, "Where was your attention? You know the rule. Whenever someone goes swimming, someone has to keep an eye on them. So why did you break the rule? What would have happened if something had happened to your mom?" Casey feels guilty for this, but after apologizing, everyone moves on. After that, they continue celebrating their son Ben's birthday. Just then, Casey receives a call from her boyfriend and notices a massive storm approaching the city behind him. Seeing this, Casey becomes worried because at that moment, they weren't exactly in a completely safe place. She goes to tell her mom and dad about it, and after hearing her, they start checking their boat for safety. While inspecting, they notice that many whales and sharks are circling around their boat. Tom knew that whales and sharks usually do this just before a huge, terrifying storm arrives. So even though they already had an idea of the storm that was coming, they first had to deal with the sharks. At that moment, their boat received a powerful jolt. Tom goes underwater to check it and discovers a huge dent beneath the boat, clearly caused by one of the large sharks. When Tom returned, he is badly injured. Seeing this, Julian stitched up his wounds. Tom then informed his family that because of the dent caused by the shark, they won't be able to move the boat forward. Their only option now is to call for help, but there is no signal. The boat's communication system isn't picking up anything. During this difficult time, Tom checks their food and water supplies. They only have enough drinking water for 4 days and almost nothing else. However, they take comfort in the fact that they are on a shipping route, so eventually some ship would notice them. While they were discussing this, a loud noise came from outside. When they went to check, they saw a huge meteorite heading straight toward them. It could collide with their boat at any moment, so Tom quickly started the engine to try and escape. But Tom knew that if he did that, his boat would get damaged, and that's exactly what happened. The engine was destroyed. Meanwhile, another meteorite was heading straight toward them. With no other way to protect themselves, the family went to the lower part of the boat and put on life jackets. Suddenly, they heard a tremendous noise, and everyone lost consciousness. When they woke up, they realized they were alive, though they were injured. Surprisingly, their boat now had a massive hole, but water wasn't coming in. When the family stepped outside their boat to survey the area, they were stunned. Fish was scattered across the ground around them, and their boat was sitting in a rocky, mountainous terrain. It was as if they had arrived on another planet. The area had completely changed. Where there had been water the night before, there were tall hills and deep pits. Tom quickly pulled out his compass to check the direction and realized that something had gone terribly wrong with the land itself. The poles had shifted. What had been the North Pole was now in the south, and the South Pole had moved to the north. As a result, the areas where people had lived were now dry land, and all the ocean water had vanished, leaving behind solid ground. The entire family was shocked by this discovery. Tom also revealed something even more terrifying, that all humans who had been on this new dry land were likely dead. Casey was terrified by this and locked herself inside the cabin. Meanwhile, Julian started gathering the remaining food supplies and Tom released all the birthday balloons into the air, hoping that if there were any survivors, they might see them. After that, Tom tried to contact someone via radio. He expected no response, but to his surprise, he received a response. A captain responded, and he too was aware of the ocean shifting, because he was in his own submarine just like Tom's family. The captain explained to Tom that the poles of the earth had indeed shifted. The captain explained to Tom that the ocean would return to its original place in about a week. When it did, the waves would be extremely dangerous. So he advised Tom to find a high place to take shelter, as their chances of survival would be much higher there.
Hearing this, Julian immediately told the children just start packing. Tom asked the captain, since the chances of survival are better inside your submarine, could you take my children in? The captain replied, I would love to, brother, but I can't. One of my crew members was killed inside, and there's only space for 2 people. I could take one, but the other would still have to stay out. Tom then pleaded, please, somehow take both of my children. I'll do anything you ask in return. The captain agreed after hearing his plea. Tom then estimated the location of the submarine and told his wife, we can reach there in just 2 days. That means we can get the kids to safety before the ocean comes back, and we'll save their lives. The next morning, the entire family prepared for their journey. As they were about to leave, Tom noticed a strange man approaching with his dog. The man appeared injured, so Tom decided to help him. He even gave him some water to drink. After drinking the water Tom offered, the man didn't thank him. Instead, he attacked. Julia, who was standing a little distance away, saw everything. The man grabbed a knife lying nearby and stabbed Tom, killing him instantly. Although she couldn't save her husband, Julia quickly ran inside the boat and locked both of her children, Kevin and Casey, in a cabin. Then she handed Casey a flare gun and said, only use this if it's absolutely necessary. As they were discussing what to do next, the killer reached the boat. To escape, Julia hid inside the bathroom and started tending to her injuries. Meanwhile, the killer began searching the boat. Finding some food, he ate it hungrily, as if he hadn't eaten for days. After eating, he went to check on Julia, but the sound he heard came from the empty cabin. Julia had slipped out of the boat through a hole. However, his dog saw Julia. Julia, forced into a deadly situation, had to kill the dog to escape, and then hid under the boat. Although she couldn't directly confront the killer, he realized she had escaped when he saw his dead dog. As he climbed down from the boat to catch her, Julia returned to the boat, using a broken piece of glass to find her way back inside. But shortly after, Julia was caught again by the man. He grabbed her by the hair, beat her brutally, tortured her, and started choking her. Now Julia somehow fights back against the killer to protect herself. Casey, who had been watching everything from the cabin with Kevin, remembers that this is the perfect moment to use the flare gun. She fires it. Although it doesn't seriously hurt the man, it sets the boat on fire. Julia quickly grabs both of her children and escapes from the yacht. As they are getting out, the killer attacks Julia again, but this time she kicks him hard and knocks him backward. Once outside, Casey and Ben see their father's dead body and break down crying. They never expected any of this to happen. Ben blames himself, thinking, if only I had released those colorful balloons yesterday, this man wouldn't have come after us. Julia, holding on to her husband, is crying as well when she notices that the killer has climbed out of their burning boat. Realizing it's no longer safe to stay there, she takes her children and flees. They run until they are exhausted and finally stop behind a hill to rest, hoping that the killer might have lost track of them. Ben continues to cry, and Casey encourages him by giving him clean drinking water, but Ben refuses to drink. As they are talking, Julia notices that the killer is still following them. The three of them immediately start running again to escape. They are tired, but whenever they glance back, the killer is still behind them. They keep running without stopping and eventually reach an area filled with toxic water. They know that anything could have happened while moving through this dangerous terrain. Still, Julia ordered her children to move through this dangerous area. As they proceeded, their condition worsened, and Julia realized that Ben was severely dehydrated. They had a few last drops of water, which she gave to Ben, but it was hardly enough to make a difference. Meanwhile, Casey had lost all hope. She didn't believe they would survive this journey, and had already accepted her death. She even told Julia and Ben to do the same. But Julia scolded her firmly. "Be quiet and do exactly as I say. We're moving forward, and I promise I will save you." Encouraged by Julia, they started moving again. Soon they spotted a plane that had probably crashed into the sea years ago. They hid inside the plane, and Julia took a last look at a family photo they had taken the night before. Seeing it reminded them of Tom. Night had fallen, and they were all exhausted. Casey and Ben had fallen asleep, but Julia couldn't rest. She stepped out of the plane and realized that even in the darkness, the killer hadn't stopped following them. The killer had noticed her too. Julia pretended to sleep. When the killer approached, she attacked him. This time, Julia was furious. She fought with such intensity and precision that she killed him, finally putting an end to the threat. Julia could finally breathe and sleep peacefully. The next morning, when they woke up, they saw the killer's body in a terrible state. This gave them a grim reminder that even the empty ocean could be extremely dangerous. Their next goal was to reach the captain's submarine. While Julia checked the map, Casey was extremely thirsty. Despite Julia warning her not to, she went ahead and drank water from a nearby pond. The water was toxic, but Casey was too desperate to listen. Julia grabbed her and pulled her out of the water just in time. Unfortunately, Ben had already fallen sick from drinking the water. Julia and Casey built a temporary shelter where they rested for a short while. Suddenly, Julia started hearing strange noises. When she went outside to investigate, she saw a huge number of crabs approaching them. To escape, they started running and spotted a massive cargo ship in the distance. The ship had many containers, and inside some of them, people had hidden. Upon seeing Julia and her children, those people locked themselves inside a container. Julia begged at the container door, pleading for them to open it. Behind them, a massive army of crabs was advancing. To escape, Julia and her children climbed onto the top of the container. As Julia climbed up, a crab bit her, but she managed to push it away and get on top. Casey tied her wound with her scarf, but then fainted. Meanwhile, Casey and Ben watched as the crabs started cutting into the container and attacked the people hiding inside. The people tried to fight back using weapons, but the crabs' numbers were overwhelming and they couldn't hold their ground. The next morning, Julia woke up to find that both of her children were missing. Terrified, she realized how dangerous and unforgiving this place was, and she began crying from fear of losing them. Suddenly, she saw Casey and Ben returning. They had gone out to search for food and weapons. Fortunately, the crabs had already moved on. Seeing her children safe, Julia felt a wave of relief. Julia tended her crab bite wound, while Ben set up the weapons they had collected. Afterwards, Julia tried contacting the captain. He informed her that sea creatures had attacked him as well, and he was severely injured and couldn't help. He also warned that the seawater would soon return to its original place, which is why the sea creatures were back. Meanwhile, Julia's group didn't even know which direction to go to reach the submarine, as their map had been lost in all the chaos. The captain fired a flare into the sky, which Ben saw. They began moving quickly toward the submarine, but reaching it seemed almost impossible. On the way, they had to pass through a toxic waste area, which could make them seriously ill or even kill them. Tensions rose. Casey started doubting her mother's ability to protect them, and they argued. Julia scolded them, insisting, "Keep moving." As they continued, fate struck again.
A landslide occurred, and a huge rock fell, trapping Julia, who was at the back. Casey didn't want to move forward without her mother, but Julia promised, "No matter what, you must save your brother." Motivated by her mother's words, Casey pressed on with Ben. When they finally reached the submarine, no one was there. They knocked loudly on its door. Just then, the captain, badly injured, appeared. He told them that his chances of survival were low and that the submarine could hold only 3 people. Hearing this, Casey immediately turned back. Meanwhile, a flood of crabs approached Julia. She started shooting at them with her gun, but soon her bullets ran out. Just as a crab was about to attack her, Casey reached down and grabbed it, helping Julia escape. Together, they quickly ran toward the submarine.
Without wasting any more time, they all boarded the submarine, with a terrifying horde of crabs still behind them. Suddenly, an enormous, monstrous ocean wave appeared, heading straight toward them. The wave was about 100 feet high and looked utterly terrifying. It crashed violently into their submarine, knocking them unconscious. When Julia regained consciousness, she was shocked to see that their submarine was no longer in the ocean. The massive wave had carried it into a ruined city, completely destroyed. The scene made it clear that humans had been wiped out from the land. And with this chilling final scene, the movie's story comes to an end. Friends, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. We'll meet again in the next exciting video.